Oh, I do. About anything.
Can we go anywhere? He's like, I'm gonna see
Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy 1 Million Cups Day. For those of you that are new, thank you for joining us at the Cider Gallery. Thank you to the Cider Gallery for hosting us, and thank you, as always, to the Deceased Divine Espresso for providing our coffee this morning. If there's any of you that don't have chairs but want chairs, there are actually chairs in the back behind the curtain area, so feel free. Some people would like to stand, that's fine too.
We got space right up here.
There's a space.
And right there.
We all, or you can sit in the front row right here. It's very sunny. It's very sunny right here. Yeah. You got your shades on? Very nice. Everyone's restoring their vitamin D. Good morning. Those of you that are not familiar with the 1 Million Cups program, this is a program caffeinated by the Kauffman Foundation, designed to educate and engage entrepreneurs in the community. And we appreciate you being here this morning. We feature 1 or 2 entrepreneurs in the area, and they are here to tell us their story, tell us about their adventures in entrepreneurship. They have a 6-minute presentation, and then we'll have an open Q&A session for us to all engage in conversation and learn from each other. So this morning, we have Dennis Stephenbush, who is a Lawrenceian, who is working with a company in Wichita right now, and is excited to tell us about that business, Alterius Technologies. So Dennis, take it away. Thanks for being here.
Thank you all for coming. I forgot I had to carry a mic. I'm Dennis Stephenbush. I'm with Alterius Technologies. I've been a serial entrepreneur for a number of different technology startups. My start in Alterius came in April of last year when a lead investor approached me, or the lead investor group, and said, we have well over half the money raised, that this group is a group of 3 engineers and they need a CEO. So we're recruiting, would you interview? And we started. A little bit about Alterius, the name. We were founded by a Greek-born Turkish immigrant, and Alterius in Greek means out of this world. And so of our 3 founders, 2 are first-generation immigrants, one from Greece or Turkey and one from India. So very interesting group. If Alterius makes it in the next 3 years, it'll be labeled as an overnight success. But that overnight success had its genesis from 8 years ago, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Where Alterius lives is where some of these problems live, and I'm going to keep it at a really high level, and I'm going to use a lot of pictures. So this is what we call the edge, and this is a corporate closet, and it's usually jammed with router switches, firewalls, modems, Wi-Fi, and any other appliance. And it's a really crowded, complex network that is really hard to manage, because if you think about the genesis of the computer world, first we had a computer that sat on a desk, and then we decided to connect it to other computers, and then we decided to connect it to a server, and sometime the internet came along, and it just kept piling on. So we kept adding devices every time a new innovation entered the market. And we had another problem. And I have all kinds of graphs about bandwidth, but this one really hit home. And this is the papal announcement for Pope Benedict in 2013. You see that announcement? Seen cameras? So in a short amount of time, and this is also about human behavior, in a short amount of time, we became sort of, I am here to experience it and share it, to I'm here to experience it and share it now with everyone as fast as possible. And so everyone is just consuming tons of bandwidth. And it's really crashing networks, and we're becoming actually tolerant of this. I was skiing on spring break, which is where the beer came from, and I was just tolerant of being up on the mountain and waiting for internet to refresh, and it was almost intolerant. So it's like, why isn't this happening? Well, I'm at 14,000 feet. I guess I should not expect this, but you do now. So so we have bandwidth problems. Then we have this new thing, and instead of calling it BYOD, I'm going to call it BYOX, which is we bring all kinds of crazy devices into our network, and we expect them to be connected to our network. And these are stunning statistics. 15 billion network connected devices. More than 2 for every person on the planet. And let me remind you, only 30% of the world's population is connected. So do the reverse math. But everyone wants to come in, they want to connect to their Gmail on the corporate network, they want to drag their tablet in, they want to share YouTube videos, they want to connect to their smartphone, and it's crashing corporate networks. It's a real challenge. How do you manage that? And then we have this little thing called Target. And that's when the world finally realized we're pretty vulnerable, and we are. So let me explain just a little bit about how typical firewalls work, and then we'll go into. And I just lost my punchline, but so here's the public network, and this is your internet. A typical firewall protects you from the outside. That's a great idea. Okay, so all that bad stuff that's coming in gets filtered, and it goes down to your laptop, your server, and your Wi-Fi network to your connected devices. Except 40% of all invasions happen where? Inside the network. Let me give you a quick example. I am a trusted connected device to our network at Alterius. I come home, I hand my mobile phone to my son, he plays some whacked out game on my Android device, right? I come back into my network, guess what? Firewall goes, Dennis is trusted, because that's Dennis's device. Except George has brought bad things into my network. So that's kind of a good example, and that's the way most of our firewalls work. That's a bad thing. And it's using this kind of technology. It sort of worked in medieval times, which is, the bad guys need to be kept out. So we'll create a drawbridge, we'll build a moat around it. But there's too many people storming the castle now. So we got to do something about that. And I told you about what Alterius does, and I'll say it really quickly, and then we'll talk a little bit more about problems. Is our inventors combined all of this: a router, security switch, WLAN in one device on one chip. Why? Because they could. They're engineers. That's what they decided to do. And they said, why do we have to do 4 different boxes? And the answer is, it's because that's the way the internet, that's the way our corporate communications have evolved. Every time you have a problem, you build a box, build a box, build a box. Finally, they decided, let's build it around one. And that's when they started 8 years ago in the chip design to make this happen. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Last issue. So if you look at all of this, right here, it's all stacked up in your corporate closet. You have this thing called overhead. And the best example, the best metaphor I could use is your water filter at home, or the Brita that you have in your refrigerator, right? No matter how much pressure you have on the front side, that filter has to do some work to send that water through, right? So the only way that you can speed it up is to add more filters. But what we have in corporate networks is, if you have 100 megabytes coming in, you could lose as much as 70 to 90% of that in processing overhead. So when especially business owners that don't know a lot about IT come in and go, why do I have 100 megabytes coming in and I can't watch my YouTube videos? The reason is your overhead has taken it all away. So we have bandwidth, we have security, We have overhead issues. So enter these guys, 3 inventors. I keep skipping. 3 inventors, data communications experts. 3 of them were with Bell Labs. The prototype was actually developed as a PhD project for one of our inventors. And it was tested by AT&T and Verizon. It actually sat in AT&T's labs for 1 year. 16 patents, over 100 claims, and multiple trade secrets on the device. And like I said, what they decided to do was, why can't we do this all on one device? Why can't we do this all on one chip? And so they went back to the chip manufacturers, since they were working with Alcatel-Lucent, and the chip manufacturers listened to people like that and put think tanks together to where they could do that. A little bit about the box and why it makes such a big difference is inside the box and inside the chip is what we like to call asymmetric processing. So typically in the processing methodology of most firewalls or networks, you go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. So it rolls through a series of steps, or sometimes it's called layers. What our inventors did was they took the chip and they processed it all at once. So layer 1 is processed at the same time as layer 2, is 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So since it's processed all at once, we have taken the overhead out of the processing. Additionally, since it's one box that switches routes and provides firewall, when I come in with that virus-infected phone, it's going through the switch, it's going through the firewall, it's going through the modem, it gets processed, it gets cleaned. So that 40% of risk that you have inside your network is now eliminated because A, the chip can process the information quicker, and B, it has to go through because it's one device. And then there's also encrypted connections between the network. So where are we now? Our Series A was raised in August of last year. We have 10 employees. We have outsourced design. We have 3, now 4 engineers in our offices that outsource most of our design to a group called Ericson in India. And then we have outsourced manufacturing by a group called Sienna Avalon in Atlanta, Georgia. Our first prototype rolled off the line April 13th, and it works. And we'll have general availability in the fall of 2014. And we have launch partners engaged. So a little bit about our marketing strategy, and we might be raising Series B, but we'll see. A little bit about our marketing strategy. We've ripped the page out of Juniper, Cisco, Fortinet, everybody else. We have started at the very, at the small to medium-sized business locations. We are serving what we like to call managed service providers, which means that they manage the networks of small to medium-sized businesses. That way, they already have a service team deployed that we can train, so we leverage their service, and their sales team. Because the typical strong managed service provider has about 300 clients. Our target client is a client that needs a high level of security and a high level of reporting. 2 great markets that we're into right now are healthcare and financial services. Both are heavily regulated. Both all contain very sensitive data and need we can provide. So last note, just to sort of bring everything full circle, this ecosystem in Kansas is very important, and I think we need to always remind ourselves, particularly in a state of, what do we have, 3.5 million people, right? Is that we got to stick together, you know, and our customer base is a customer base within 400 miles, and I sit there and say, look, we're a technology company, we need your help, because we need you to be our test customers, because if you can't support your own home team, then you shouldn't be out throwing rocks and saying we can't grow our community together. So, A, we're a Midwest company. B, this company was supported heavily by the Wichita Technology Corporation before it started. Again, we had 3 engineers. They provided business assistance. They helped set the foundations for the market strategy. And they recruited me, and they also helped us raise our Series A, which was pretty substantial. It means less now with tax reform in the state of Kansas, but with our investors, it means a lot to have angel tax credits. And that's a big motivator for a lot of our investors. Our pipeline program, Alex Chadlar, our Chief Technology Officer, went through this program, and I'm sure they talked about it here. Alcatel-Lucent, and Wichita is a very interesting city. It's very interesting because of its entrepreneurial history and legacy. But if you think about everything that's cycled through there, it's amazing. You have Vice, you have Coke that still exists today, you have Pizza Hut, you have a high volume of fast food. You have Alcatel-Lucent and LSI. They had hundreds of people employed in Wichita, Kansas, and if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have my 3 runners. They wouldn't have sent them to Bell Labs to work. And they actually worked for Bell Labs in Wichita, Kansas, which just shocked and surprised me. And then our school systems, I mean, I'm a KU alum. We have 2 other Wichita State alums and K-State. And if you know how to draw on those resources, it's incredibly helpful, both to receive and to give back to all schools. And that's been a very important part of the ecosystem. So that's our company. Fortunately, I'm not raising money, so I won't even have to talk about that. What are your questions?
Dennis, do I understand correctly that you basically take the pieces after the modem?
We take the people, including the modem.
Including the modem.
So we can take a fiber connection or a coax connection or a DSL connection, and we can send it to your end device. So
One box.
one box, and what the attractive part, not only with the processing power, I can sit here and talk about bits and bytes and how exciting it is, but what the MSPs really like is it's simple. One box, one number to call, one problem, hopefully one company can solve the problem if it exists.
So you're completely protocol agnostic. You're just looking at pure IP data, whatever. As long as it's IP data, you guys can handle it, right?
Are you talking about incoming protocols?
Yes, incoming protocol. I guess we have to think about outgoing stuff too, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
package it correctly.
inside the box is the processing power to manage an MPLS network, TCP/IP network, whatever it's coming in on, we're receiving and reprocessing. The other interesting part is in your speed to your end device, you may hop through 2 or 3 carriers. So you go from Cox to AT&T to Verizon to Charter to the end device. What this box also does is what's called provider bridging, to where we can encapsulate the packets or the message to where it doesn't have to receive routing instructions from any of those carriers, so it goes from point to point without being processed.
I can see that this has a potential reducing or eliminating the need for router and modem restarts, which in some networks like what we work with in the payments world, makes it look like our system's down, but it's really all these boxes that stop talking to each other. Am I supposed to be correct there?
You're absolutely correct. I think an MSP's largest percentage of time is eliminating finger pointing. Because then it comes to the modem, then it goes to the router, then it goes to the switch. You call 3 different companies, right? And they're like, well, it's not ours. What are you connected to? I'm connected to a Cisco switch. Why don't you call Cisco? I'm sure it's them. And downtime, it was funny, I was talking to, this was 10 years ago, when Sunflower was bringing in internet connectivity, and I said, what's the big difference now? And they said, the internet is personal. When cable goes down, everybody was fine. The internet is personal.
That's true. two questions, and they might be related, so I'm going to ask them both if that's okay. First one is about the patents. You mentioned that you guys had 16 patents, and I'm wondering if there were any challenges, if any of the work came from work that these inventors did while at Alcatel-Lucent or at Bell Labs, and how you managed that process. The second question is just, man, 8 years to get this product to market? Like, God, it seems like a long time, and I realize this is a pretty complicated product, but has there been any thought to getting, speed, like more of a lean startup model where you get something out, or that just wasn't possible here?
First on the patents, let me answer that. We were blessed because this was Alex's PhD project, which protected him from Alcatel-Lucent, from them claiming that this was work done for hire. The second is they approached Alcatel-Lucent and said, we have a consumer premises device, what do you think? And Alcatel-Lucent says, not our strategy. You guys need to start a business. And that's what they did. So they were sent away with their blessing, essentially. To answer the 8 years, they didn't know what they had. They were sort of working in the corporate world, so they were working corporate time. So when they got everybody together, that was the first time that LSI had gotten together with Alcatel-Lucent and all their competitors and said, let's put a think tank together and let's design a chip. And so it took that long really to design a chip. Probably until about 4 years ago was the time that they finally realized, hey, we need to design this thing. So.
In the corporate network world, there's a lot of reason to have differentiated devices. I had another 100 employees. I go out and I buy, let's say I add 48 employees, I go buy a Cisco switch that's got 48 ports on it. But I'm buying just what I need for that. In this particular model, then am I almost overpaying for the fact that I also have Wi-Fi and everything else on that particular switch? Or are you just looking at edge device or what?
That's a good point, and I'll answer it a different way. You could do a managed switch and connect to us if that's all you need is a switch to expand your ports. The other part with the Alterius box is our cost of goods sold are so low, you could actually buy it at a managed switch price and turn on the features that you want. So if you need a switch, if you need a modem, and you need a Wi-Fi, and you don't need a firewall, we can sell that to you. If you want to buy it 100 megabytes, we can sell that to you. This device actually scales up to 9 gigabytes in its current form. It'll go a little bit higher than that after that.
Have you developed pricing models for a scalable pricing model yet?
Yes, and it's all around speed and ports. So, but it's pretty simple. One of the things that we learned in our focus groups was most of the people that are buying the products said, stop lying to us. Don't sell us a $1,000 box and give us $9,000 in upgrades. Just tell us what we're going to pay because we do the math. So that's what we did. We basically said, okay, you're going to get 100 megabytes of speed, a firewall, and there's 3 pricing models, which includes the hardware, the warranty, and whether or not you have the firewall turned on. The other pricing model we have is for small to medium-sized businesses that say, $20,000 is a lot to pay. We say, hey, you can pay for $400 a month. Just sign a 3-year contract, and it's hardware as a service, which means we guarantee a certain level of service regardless of what's in the closet. So if we have to upgrade, we upgrade.
Yes, can you tell us more about your customer acquisition process?
Sure. It started early, and we have approached managed service providers in the local area, mostly in Wichita, but we have some in Hutchinson, we have some in Kansas City, and we brought them in really as resources. What do you really need with your product? Our product probably started as a product-led company. We have to flip it into, okay, we have 100 great things that these engineers designed. What do you really need? And then we eliminated it down to about 10 really important things that says, make it simple, help me monitor and report that device to my client, and don't let it go down. And make it Does that answer your
So you
question?
don't see yourself having a sales team in-house, or?
We do have an in-house sales team that sells to MSPs. So our first strategy is those sales guys go to the MSPs. They sell to the MSPs. They help the MSPs sell to the end customer. And typically, when we anticipate a sale is to be made, is when the service agreement for an existing set of equipment at an MSP's customers expire. So typically, an MSP turns over equipment about every 3 years when the equipment becomes obsolete, or the warranty expires, or they lose support on that device. So we bring in a new set of devices. It will be rare that we anticipate that someone will walk in and say, Wichita Clinic, what you need to do is pull all that stuff out that you just installed a year ago and put it in. That won't be our sale. We'll get a couple of those, but we won't get, that's not what we're going to build our business on.
So what does this company look like in 10 years? Like, what kind of a revenue ceiling do you think you have? Is this going to, how many Kansas jobs, or is Cisco going to make the offer you can't refuse in 5 years?
Yeah, I'm always asked that question, which is, what's your exit strategy? And I always try and dodge the question. But my answer is, if we don't do the things right that we need to do, we won't get acquired. So our strategy is build at the MSP level within a 400-mile radius, build distribution. So we'll have a distribution network, because I don't want to manage a sales network. I want to have someone else manage that. And then start looking for international partners, and we're already engaging in those conversations, but that's about a year and a half out before we're ready to do that. Our first 6 months is mission critical, that's why we're here in a 400-mile radius, which is my techs can get in the car with a new box and get out there and touch the customer.
2 questions. The first is, you're manufacturing a physical good, and so I'm curious where you do that and how you decided to do that at that location. And then the second question is, can you talk a little about corporate piracy or espionage since you're working overseas?
Okay, I'll answer the first question first. Manufacturing, I'm really fortunate to have 3 engineers that have worked with international manufacturers. So they to be trained through the AT&T Alcatel-Lucent history is huge, because they already knew who the right guys were, who the good guys were, and the bad guys were out in the field. And the corporate espionage part, the beauty of most of our secret sauce is layered into the chip. So we don't really have to worry about anybody stealing the secret sauce in India. The only thing the programmers can do in India is to call that instruction out. So if they want to do a firewall function, they call it out. And then since they designed the chip, I don't know the technical term, but if you penetrate the chip, it self-explodes. So the whole thing melts on itself. So reverse engineering is pretty tough. And it worries me that my CTO says, in order to beat a criminal, you gotta think like one. And it's true. I mean, because if you're gonna think like the police force, and I always think about superheroes are always reactive, aren't they? Superman doesn't go and say, there's a crime about ready to be committed, and why doesn't he just take Lex Luthor out at the beginning of the series? But that would be dramatic. So that's what he said. We're all on the predictive side.
And is the chip made U.S. or overseas?
LSI Logic makes the chip. They're out at Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly where it's manufactured. I know the final testing is done in Austin. And the chip the chip and the software doesn't get laid in until Atlanta, Georgia. And since we're going to have to get Department of State approval to go outside the country, that's why we had to do it in Atlanta. Plus it's close. And this is a serendipitous story. Even before I started working with Alterius, Alex had made a trip to India, and he's talking to these manufacturing partners, and they start talking. He goes, "Oh, Wichita." Because my brother graduated from Wichita State University. That brother is the CEO of our outsourced manufacturing company. He got his master's at Wichita State, and his mentor got him U.S. citizenship. So this guy is, $200 million company. He gets on a plane to visit this rinky-dink little startup in Wichita, Kansas, and says, I'm on board. And that was just luck, and it was great.
Wichita seems to have a lot of exciting stuff going on as far as startup capital. Can you talk a little bit about like getting those angel tax credits and other pieces that have kind of worked into your puzzle?
Yeah, Wichita has a great community for the right deals. So there's a lot of money available, but if you come in with something that they can't relate to, and this is a long way out of their comfort zone, then you can acquire that capital. Angel tax credits are pretty easy. You go to kansasangels.com and you fill out an application. You work through the state. If your business qualifies for angel tax credits, then you submit your business plan and your application, and then they'll issue the credits based on whether or not you fit within their criteria and whether or not they have tax credits to issue.
So you mentioned tax reform in Kansas, and I'm wondering, 2 years from now, is that kind of thing even possible? Would what you have done over the last 4 be possible in the future?
As far as angel tax credits, it'll be harder. I mean, even this year it's harder because in order to reach the tax bracket to where, we're going to give, if you get a $100,000 investment, you get a $50,000 state of Kansas tax credit. Well, the way the tax reform has gone is you've got to earn a lot of income to get that $50,000 tax break in state taxes. So it is harder, and I think the state's going to need to come up with something else as an incentive to keep that around, because it's a big deal. I mean, I've had a number of out-of-state tax investors sell their tax credits since it was brokerable. That was the deal closure for them.
What kind of liability do you take on as a company operating as like a firewall, especially when your target market is like healthcare, dealing with drugs?
We try and insure around that, but that's all part of the user license agreement. So we set rules that we're going to do our best efforts, and it will be based on the catalogs that we maintain. For instance, of bad websites that we will block, or bad email addresses, or the processing power. So the IT industry has done a wonderful job, and nobody is taking the time to read that little thing that comes up. But if you ever get a chance, read it, because it absolves them from all liability. And once you click accept, now it's caveat emptor. So to be sued for an invasion that we stated we don't protect against, you can get sued for it. It'll cost a lot of money, but we won't win. That's a shallow victory for a startup, because by then you're out of money fighting a lawsuit.
Just one more question. Who do you see as your competition? I mean, would you have to assemble a range of different providers and call that group your competition then?
Our competition is anybody that sells a switch, a firewall, a router, a modem. So our top competition is Cisco, Juniper, Fortinet, Palo Alto Labs. All of those are who we consider competition. So we are not entering. That's our biggest challenge, which is fighting against the big establishments. We have to outperform them in technology and service. But it's also a benefit, because most of my startup world has been introducing new products and creating a market around them. I already have a market. People still have to buy this equipment, either as a new business or as a business recycling their network. So if we're in there, if we have the proper MSP partner, and this is why we sell MSPs too, because I would say 80 to 90% of the corporate world relies on that managed service provider. Rarely do you have a CEO come in and go, I want a Cisco rack, I want a Fortinet, I want a Palo Alto Labs, firewall. They're like, just give it to me. make it work, and I want to go back and do my business. So the MSPs are a trusted advisor to those small and medium-sized businesses, and we need to be their trusted advisor that what we put in will work and satisfy their customer.
Have you considered seeking out PCI compliance, being part of industry compliance, to be able to securely handle things?
Yes, it will be PCI compliant. So we'll have all of those compliance. It is HIPAA. It'll do the 3 A's, which is auditing, accounting, and I think it's reporting. But so I forgot the A. But those 3 items with HIPAA, and then it will also be SOX compliant as well. So it'll be more proactive than reactive, because if you enter a HIPAA audit and they say, tell us all of the activity that's happened on this board, has Susie been accessing Dr. V's records inappropriately? Can you provide a report on that? Ours will. It'll actively store that in a database so that it's a press of a button and you can pull that report up, rather than let's go through all the history bots and try to pull it up. So.
If a lot of the corporate stuff and even a lot of the personal stuff is actually going through, cloud services are being touted, right?
Yes.
Do you foresee, actual traffic? But this thing resides actually at the customer site, right?
It's both at the customer premise and at the data center premise, and it can also be at CLEX or ILEX, so cable providers, community telecom, and then ultimately our goal is to get back into AT&T Verizon. The reason why we didn't choose them early is the sales cycle is so long for AT&T and Verizon. So if you go to a data center, let's see if I can. If you go to a data center or cloud process, you can have our box on the customer premise and communicate to your cloud provider faster, quicker, and easier. And then if we have 2 Alterius boxes, we also have 1 additional dynamic encryption layer to send, so that data is never in the clear. And so when you talk about MPLS network, the way the algorithm was designed was that traffic is encapsulated by MPLS, right? So that's the way people read the headers of traffic going through. But inside that package is an encrypted packet, and it is a proprietary encryption algorithm. And actually, if you wanted to use some of the state certified encryption algorithm, DES, triple DES, or anything like that, it'll encapsulate that, and then it'll put another encryption layer below it. So, especially with a lot of issues right now around health information being trafficked back and forth, particularly with health information networks, this is a big deal. And,
A lot of chip manufacturers will resell for many device manufacturers. You might have like a Broadcom chip and Linksys or Cisco or some other manufacturer's product. Have you guys ever thought about taking that approach, or why the kind of Apple integrated chip and device approach?
I'll add, because that's what I started with.
Okay.
So I'm selling what we have. We might go backwards into that. A lot of questions have been asked, since you have 17 patents, why don't you sell the patents? Well, in my mind, you don't have value until you have something that works. So now I want to put something that works to work. I think there's a question on the Wichita, Kansas jobs. I'd love to keep this company in Wichita, Kansas, or working. I hope we grow to hundreds of employees, but the world, I will sell out to the highest bidder. It won't lie about that. But hopefully I can keep jobs in Wichita, and most likely that's the corporate philosophy is, if we have a large enough infrastructure, they don't want to move it to Palo Alto because it's a lot more expensive to manage a business in Palo Alto, California. And our people show up to work every day. Serves up, dude.
Okay, I'd like one more question. One of the biggest going talks about the commoditization of even on really high-end technical products, which means Cisco is really shifting toward the idea of services-based, and the idea that you entice customers to use more and more of the features that they already have in their products, and you create microtransactions based on your usage of that. Given the fact that you have all these pieces kind of in this ubiquitous device that you could put anywhere, is that part of your pricing model?
It is. It's sort of, if you took all of those things and combined them, that's how we set our competitive price, which is, based on the features that you want, we're going to set a price, an all-in-one price around.
So it is all in one. It's not, if you want this, you pay an additional kind of.
Right, yeah, so the only adder we add is the firewall feature. And then in our pricing strategy, and remember we go to market in September, so this is all dynamic. But our thought was if you want to take something out, if you want to take a modem out, then it's retail minus a price. So instead of adding, we subtract in the pricing model. And you brought up a good thing. Cisco just announced that they're going to do all cloud everything. And I got a call from a couple of investors going to the world, the sky is falling. And my answer is no, it isn't. There's tens of thousands of data centers out there trying to provide cloud services. The only thing those guys are going to do is suit up and try and differentiate themselves against Cisco. Because if you have a multi-million-dollar data center that you're housing data for clients, you're going to do everything you can to keep that business. I've never seen a data center just go, oh, game over. Look, Cisco just announced this. They're all moving to their corporate boardrooms going, how do we differentiate ourselves? This is a huge opportunity for us, and I think this is one of the best times to be in this market. And that is a complete different story that I presented at George Bidlingmeyer's class 2 years ago on this company.
So last question, Dennis, you know the drill at 1 million cups, so what can we as a community do to support you and Alterius?
I think if you have a managed service provider, give me their names. We'd love to talk to them. If you want to be part of this, we're seeking thought leaders, we're seeking opinions, we're seeking as many different connection points that we can come up with to better define the business. Because that's the only way that we're going to succeed is if we're market driven. And that would be the best thing that anyone can do for